Welcome to CryptoBiz, the Business of Crypto podcast. Keith Allen, Brad Nickel, and Austin Gaines back at it talking everything crypto, tokenization, and ICO. Brad, give them a quick rundown on who we are and what we do.
We are Black Knox. We advise and guide existing cryptocurrencies and token generation events, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, in their best strategy for their ICO and also in their best strategy after they have money in the bank or money in the crypto wallet and need to get to market and market themselves, market their product, get users, et cetera. So we help projects realize their dreams.
And Austin, tell them who we're not.
We are not financial advisors, attorneys, or tax advisors, so please don't take anything we say as professional advice.
That's right. These are opinions.
You read that just like a disclaimer should be read.
Perfect.
Oh, goodness. So, in our last episode, we started talking about really what it takes to head down the ICO path or whether it's even the right fit for your company. And if you are planning on doing that, I encourage you to go back and listen to episodes 1 and 2 and specifically to episode 2, where we kind of discuss the criteria of what you should be thinking and looking at before you determine whether an ICO is right for you and your company. At the end of the day, you're likely a startup or an existing company who's going to expand your business somehow using blockchain technology. And if that's right for you, then you can determine whether traditional fundraising events are the right fit for you or going down the ICO path is right for you. And if going down the ICO path for you is the right choice, then you're going to need some components in place. And today we're going to talk about some of those key components, namely your team and your white paper. If you are working your way or even considering any sort of tokenization of your platform, your ecosystem, whether that means you're going to hold an ICO or even if you're not going to hold an ICO, and many times you don't need to. One of the necessary components is a white paper. And white papers come in a lot of forms, but they really they really need to be more detailed than some of the ones that we've seen. We've seen some very well-written technical documents. We've also seen some that have so many holes in them that you have to wonder what the organization is thinking, because at the end of the day, you got to deliver all the details to convince people that what you're doing is a legitimate, bona fide, viable project, and it's something worth their attention and eventually their participation.
Yeah, it's no longer a slap up a website and raise 20 million environment, folks. So they're going to scrutinize the hell out of your white paper. They're going to ask questions. They're going to want to understand the strategy, and we can talk about the components here in a minute, but it's a critical piece, a very critical piece in creating legitimacy in the minds of potential buyers of your token.
And if you're the company that's doing this, right, and you have a company that whether you're a startup or you're an existing company and you're considering tokenizing, think of it as, from the perspective of a startup, think of it as, okay, I'm a startup. And what am I going to do to get people interested and excited about what we're doing, to convince them that this is a viable project that is going to succeed and ultimately thrive and flourish? And if you are an existing company and you're looking to tokenize and expand on what you have already done, then you're essentially trying to convince people to invest or buy into what you are about to do. So it's very much mirrors the pitch process for any project. It really does. And all the components about your business need to be sound.
Absolutely.
Right. And you'll be going through that process if you refer to the first steps of the process in creating, a sound business plan. A lot of these steps are spelled out for you already, but maybe not in as much detail as you would have to put into the white paper. So you don't have to start from scratch. You should already have that framework so you could feed off of it.
Right, but whether you're launching an ICO or you're going after VC money, you still need to have these components in place.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Especially if you're, and frankly, interestingly enough, on the startup side for VCs, typically the pitch is a pitch deck and a business plan with a lot less technical detail. What I think that will happen in this scenario is that Venture capitalists who've been playing in the crypto space are going to start expecting startups to do much deeper technical dives into what they're developing, whether they're in crypto or not. And so you've got to have both. You've got to have a strategy and a plan, and you've got to have a white paper, and the white paper has to include technical details as well as strategic details.
Indeed. So why don't we get into some of the components that the people should be including in their white papers and why it's important to have them?
Well, let's start off with clear and grammatically correct English, please. If your native language is not English, you cannot use Google Translate to create your white paper from the language that you wrote it in. You have to hire someone to translate it from the language it was started in into the language into English, because you will immediately get points off from potential investors if the English language version of your white paper sucks.
Now, but it's also equally important because there are ICO investors all over the world, and certainly very, very, very heavy in the Asian markets. It's important to also have multilingual versions.
Absolutely. If you expect to get investments from people outside of the English-speaking world, you're going to need a Chinese version. If you want Korean investors, you're going to need a Korean version. So yeah, that's an expense to be thinking about, and or having a team member that's capable of doing it because they're fluent in both languages.
And there are services who can do that translation for you. If you don't have somebody on your team that has those capabilities, there's certainly some translation services that can help you with that process.
But you don't want a standard translation service. You need a tech documentation or crypto-oriented translation service that can speak to blockchain and blockchain-related technologies in the language, because a standard translator will not understand the technical language in a white paper, and they won't have a clear method of translating that into another language.
It's just definitely an expense that shouldn't be spared, because 2 sentences into your white paper, you can tell that it was just translated by Google or in an unprofessional manner. So please, you guys need to spend the money on this. If you're looking to raise $20 million, people need to know that you have taken the time to make your document grammatically correct and well written, because there's no way someone's going to write you, don't put money into your ICO if you can't get, the first paragraph in a grammatically correct. It's just not going to happen.
Sure.
Agreed.
Style. We're all about we're all about the style here at Black Knox. So it's actually very important here to say, well, it's a white paper. It shouldn't have a lot of style to it. Well, you're absolutely right. It shouldn't be overly styled. But if you're going to use graphics, and there are certain parts of your white paper that should use graphics, you want it to be clean. You want it to be consistent. You'd like to have some branding relative and consistent with your brand guidelines. All of those things matter. They make you look more professional, more buttoned up. We just actually finished a pitch deck for a client, and the draft version they had given us didn't really do any of those things, and they didn't really understand what we were talking about until we gave them a stylized version of their deck, and they said, "Oh, now we get it. Listen, when you're sitting down in front of a room of potential investors, you want to look as professional and buttoned up as you possibly can." Makes a difference.
You don't have to have the most highly stylized thing ever created, but you need to look professional. And you don't need 5 paragraphs of text on a slide when you're actually standing up in front of a room full of people talking about it.
Less is more, and you need to know the subject matter well enough to speak to it without the slides. Slides are reference.
Exactly. Clutter for the sake of putting something on a page does not work.
No. So let's talk strategy and detailing it and why that's important, Brad.
So it used to be that a white paper would be primarily technology, but that's no longer the case. It is the expectation that your go-to-market strategy, your marketing plan is going to be a part of the white paper. People want to know that, yes, you have an idea about how you're going to build this thing you want to build from a technology perspective, but they also want to know how you're going to get customers, how you're going to get to market, how are you going to increase the value of this project or this company by gaining users who are utilizing the technology, the platform, and the network. And so it is critical that you have that and make it part of what you are putting in the white paper. How are you going to get to market? What methodologies are you going to use, or at least test, to attract customers? What kind of companies are you going to partner with for further distribution because you're a small startup just getting started? How are you going to close deals with large customers if that's part of your model? Who's going to be your sales force? Who's going to handle the partnering and business development? Do they have any experience in it? All of those things are absolutely critical to convincing people that you have legitimately thought through how you're going to succeed with this project.
And how many have we seen that don't have that?
Way too many. Way too many. Look, it's
the mass
normal.
majority of them.
Yeah. A lot of these folks are either technology people who have never run a business, or have very little experience outside of the tech side of running a business, or they come from a specific vertical market segment and they want to apply blockchain to their market segment, but don't necessarily know how to plan a marketing strategy and a business development strategy. And so it's not only important that they define that strategy, it's important that they, and we'll talk about this later, it's important that they surround themselves with people, advisors, and then team members who know how to build and implement these strategies. And showing that you're willing to bring in partners and team members like that goes a long way to making potential buyers of your token feel safer and better.
Yeah, and I would encourage anybody to go back and listen to episode 2, because we really went a little more in depth on on team, in terms of knowing what your capabilities are, what your team's capabilities are, and knowing where you need help and support, and potentially to hire new people. And when you are, one of the things that you're going to want in your white paper is to illustrate what you're spending your money on. Okay, if you're going to go raise $20 or $30 million, where is that money being spent? How are the tokens being allocated? And where's the money being spent? And if you realize that you're maybe a great CTO, but you're not the best CEO, then it's okay to let people know that you're going to hire team members to fill in the holes in the roles that your existing team does not excel at.
Because you'll get questioned about that, right? If your background isn't having run a successful large technology project and taken it to market, people are going to say, who's going to do that? And so you've got to be prepared with that answer in the white paper. And you've got to be prepared with that answer by listing those people that are going to help you out. And
they're going to say that about every role. Okay. So it's not just CEO and CTO. They're going to know who's doing the marketing, who's doing business, all of those things. So it's important.
Absolutely. Critical. So all of that marketing stuff is very important.
Now, the tech obviously is a pretty key component here. At what point, Brad, does it become too much of a technical document? Because not everybody that's reading your white paper understands all of the tech. So is there kind of a guideline for how deep you go?
I think you start off with an overview in the executive summary of the white paper, or the beginning abstract of the white paper. You really talk about it in an overview perspective. This is the network we're building on. This is the decisions we've made about the infrastructure. Here are the basic components of what we're building and how we're going to build it and how we're going to secure it. And then you allow people to read the rest of the document that's all encompassing, and then get to the second section, which is the detailed technology component of it, right? So my feeling is that's the best way to approach it, because most of the folks who are reading it are not likely to be highly technical. Now, the bad news is there will be people reading it that are highly technical, part of the crypto space, and they think it's their mission to destroy your technology planning. So just be prepared that in the crypto world, there will be people that will be critical of the choices you make of how you're going to develop it. That doesn't mean you knee-jerk reaction and change what you are putting into the details of your technical platform, but it certainly gives you the opportunity to learn from other people and think about what they would offer. So to answer your question, Keith, overview it, summary, here's the blockchain we're using, here's what we're building, here's the components, here's the roadmap. Then much more detail in the second half of the document, and have it be all deep dive on tech.
Okay, I firmly believe that most people, unless they have a technical background, aren't spending much time other than a high-level browse through the tech section of the document, with one exception, and that's tokenomics. got to explain specifically what the token use is, how it's going to be utilized, whether security or utility, and most especially as a utility, because you need to define that, how it's going to be utilized within the ecosystem so that is a very clear picture.
Yeah, I think that's real important. Tokenization and how you're utilizing it's really critical. And then further with the tokenomics of it, pricing and modeling and how many you're going to have and all of that is stuff that will get checked out and looked at and be definitely a part of the picture. So, and I think, again, you can abstract out the actual functionality in the first half of the document and then how the tokenization will work in a detailed technical fashion in the technical section of the document. I think that's the best way to handle it. One other thing I wanted to quickly note on the tech development side of it, there is a big decision to be made. And for those of you that are not making a big tech-based blockchain play, you have a big decision to make with someone who can provide you with technical guidance about what blockchain you're going to use to launch your platform. If there is a utility to your token, that means what you launch has to have some customization and some custom development done to it. So you're going to have to consider which blockchain is right for what you need. Do you want to use the Ethereum network and program in smart contracts and Solidity? Do you want to customize an existing blockchain completely and rewrite some of the core components of that to fit what you want your business model to do because you think that the Ethereum network is too clogged, or you're concerned that the speed of transactions on another network is not fast enough? Those are all like a huge consideration that you have to make and stick to pretty early in the process.
There's so many variables in this, man. It's a challenge.
It is a challenge. And then when you're going through the process of the white paper, though, us as advisors do the same thing. They start opening your eyes so you can work them out. If you just slap everything together and say, oh, this is going to somehow fall in place, it's never going to work. There is just way too many variables. And, luckily for everyone in crypto, there are a lot of options on what you can use.
There are options, and we could probably do a whole episode on maybe determining whether you create your own blockchain or you customize an existing one or fork or what the strategy is there. But that's a show in itself.
Yes.
Yeah,
yes,
definitely.
it is.
So another piece that even the people who are browsing your white paper, and it's probably a little disheartening to hear this, but after you pour in all this time and money to create your white paper, the harsh reality is not a lot of people read it. The ones that do are really going to be important to you, but not a lot of people read them, cover to cover. But one thing that everybody checks out, in addition to the tokenization, tokenomics piece, is your timeline and your roadmap.
Right.
Everybody wants to know when it's going to happen, how it's going to unfold. And you have got to be very, very careful and calculated here, because if you start missing milestones on your roadmap, that's going to come back and haunt you.
And don't give specific dates.
Right.
It's okay to give generalized quarters. If you think something is going to happen in the final 2 weeks of the third quarter, push the delivery timeline to the fourth quarter, or even better, to the first quarter of the next year. Development historically takes 3 times longer than estimated, and you should not set dates that potentially could be missed, because you will feel the wrath, and you will also probably feel the dump.
Yeah. Anything that you've accomplished, any of your accomplishments, go ahead and pin those in the timeline. Absolutely, right? Last year we did X, Y, and Z. Leading up to this point.
Start your timeline, backlog it.
Right.
If you've already started your development, put 2017, what point you've hit. So they're there. That gives you some substance, and then move forward.
Absolutely. Everything you have accomplished to date relative to this project, you should have on that timeline, right? Those are all valuable things that make people go, hey, these guys are further along than most. But as Brad mentioned, do not be too specific with your future dates and forecasting, because things happen. Development takes longer. other other variables come into play. And if you are pinned to something that's supposed to happen in August of 2018 and it doesn't happen until September or October, you're going to feel it.
Yeah, and you feel it on every level. You feel it with an onslaught of chats in your Telegram channel, your Discord channel. You feel it with posts on Twitter, and you feel it in your token and people dumping it because they're tired of waiting on you and they think you can't do anything and you're incompetent. And what you have to remember is that people get in a panic, right? They want to believe in your team. They want to believe in your vision. They want to believe that you are going to accomplish your goals so that the tokens they purchased will have value in your network. And so they want to be on your side, but people will also panic when they're putting money into something if they don't see the team delivering. And many, many, many of the people who are buying tokens are not used to the technology industry. They're not used to startups. They don't understand that these things happen and that delays happen. So it's critical that you set much further out expectations than what you think it will be, so that when you don't make what you think it will be, you haven't scared your community to death.
So I think we've touched on most of the really key components to what goes into it. Maybe we should just speak for a minute or so about what it takes to get one created, because it really needs to be professionally written, and that is not an inexpensive endeavor.
Nope.
And a lot of companies, especially startups who are relying on an ICO to fund the project, may have a hard time being able to afford a good white paper writer and translation services. What can they do in advance, Brad, to maybe have a document that they can start to circulate prior to having a full white paper done?
Well, I think they should try to write the full white paper themselves first.
Right.
Even if you're going to use a writer, number one, it'll save you money. And number two, it's going to make you, it's just like the business plan, right? It forces you to think about the assumptions you have made about your business, your strategy, and your technology and how you're developing it. It forces you to make sure that it makes sense. It forces you to make sure that what you're doing is correct. The other thing it does is when you hand someone a rough draft of a white paper, you're going to reduce your costs because it's going to take them a lot less time to do it. And you're going to have a much easier time of communicating what you mean and what your goals are for the project if you've already written out a lot of what you think you would want in a white paper, right? So, but Keith, you're absolutely right. This is no longer an inexpensive thing. We're hearing prices in the market for creating a white paper from scratch of $15,000 to $30,000. And so you need to make sure that you've done as much of that as possible that you can. The other side of this is if you're a decent writer, you know tech, and you have a business strategy and plan, you may very well create a pretty competent white paper. And then you just have to get feedback from people that know what to expect in a white paper, advisors like us or team members or mentors who can give you feedback on it. You may be able to do it yourself. There are people who are really good at it, though, that can make your life a lot easier by doing the core writing for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, again, it's not a process that too many people enjoy doing or going through, but I agree with you, Brad. I think the most valuable part of this exercise is that it forces you to think through every element of the business, every element of your tech, every element of your tokenization and utilization of those tokens. And that is going to help you really probably not just define what your platform is going to be, but it's going to force you to work through some problems and solve them prior to getting to market.
It's going to make you have a better chance of succeeding and being a good leader and being a CEO or being a project lead.
Yes, indeed. Well, guys, I think we cranked out some valuable knowledge today, to be honest with you.
I do as well. I think we
I love when we agree.
It's a
We're
rare
not-
thing.
It's a rare occasion. But
We're
it's not
we're,
gonna happen.
we're not nearly as entertaining, but I like when we agree. Now this is good. And what we're gonna do is continue this series on the ICO process because there's a lot that goes into it, and this was a particular piece that we felt you guys would get some good, valuable information on because so many clients, every single client, quite honestly, comes to us and asks how to tackle this part of the process. So certainly a really, really valuable component, and we're going to continue to deliver content through the various stages of launching your company and your tokenized platform. So you can look forward to that in our next several episodes of the CryptoBiz podcast. Guys, you got any parting thoughts?
Yes. If you love this podcast, please, please, please review it on iTunes. If you hated it, send an email to yousuck@blacknox.com.
Oh man! And if how about you, Austin? Anything?
I think Brad just summed it up. I don't think there's any more to add to that.
Yeah. How to reach us. You want to handle that, Keith?
That would be good. No, you do it. You do it so well.
All right. So if you just want to talk about crypto business, reach out to us on Telegram at CryptoBiz. If you've got an ICO you want us to tear apart and shred because you think it's ridiculous, that's the place to do it. If you have news or information about the industry or really cool business models or great uses of blockchain, at CryptoBiz on Telegram. If you would like to talk to us about your white paper or your project, you can reach us at BlackNox on Telegram, and that's BLACKNOX on Telegram. Please spread the word about this podcast. We are trying to create a community of best practices, and we love to have your feedback.
Absolutely. And if you have any subject matter you'd like us to tackle on a future episode of CryptoBiz, send it to us at CryptoBiz and Telegram as well. It was a pleasure as always, guys. And we appreciate you joining us on the CryptoBiz podcast. For Brad Nickel and Austin Gaines, my name's Keith Allen. Thanks for joining us on CryptoBiz, the Business of Crypto podcast.